There are some books that you just need in each and every language to get the full range of human literary experience in each language. For instance, H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. But this is not about H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. A friend of mine, actually, Adam Pearce, has thankfully translated J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit into Welsh. He's Adam, but I'm Benjamin, and Adam's done a great work for us in that we need this language, Cymraeg, the Welsh language, to have these great works in our language. And this company here, Llyfrau Melyn Bapur, that's Paper Mill Books, is responsible for this. They even have H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, a Perion Damser. But The Hobbit is so relevant to what so many people want to read. In fact, part of Adam Pearce's reasons for translating this book was wanting to get this to a wider audience, giving people books in Welsh that they actually want to read. I mean, how many people have been exposed to The Hobbit? 1 billion by this point? Because of the film franchise? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. 1 billion people, if that many, in their lives since its publication have been influenced by this book. It is immense. And so we have this in our language now. But Cornish, a language far smaller than us, we have over 500,000, they have a few thousand. They got this out in 2014. Come on, we're decades behind. But the Cornish did something interesting. They spelled it anhobis, with an S at the end, because in their language the T naturally became an S over time. And so I think Adam Pearce did something really important just in the title of this to begin with, Hobbit. Because as Cornish changed to an S, a lot of our endings changed to a D. So it reflects the phonological changes, which, believe me, J.R.R. Tolkien would have been, yeah, he likes that kind of thing, right? But this book is not originally Cornish or Welsh. This is an English book. And part of why I enjoy J.R.R. Tolkien so much is because I am an Anglophile. There is something about the Shire kind of Tory, pleasant Greenland kind of thing that is just, oh, it's lovely. In an English context, of course. But Welsh, when fused with that, does something marvelous. And I think this translation captures that, in that Welsh is an intensely localized language, not in terms of our small geography, but in terms of our concept of broedd, little areas, which I describe as almost as if a cultural area that's defined by how long you can walk and be in the same cultural zone, same colloquialisms, same family histories, same way of building stone walls. It's very local. But when you combine that with this Anglophilic kind of Oxbridge way of writing about the pleasant little green shires, something exquisite happens that I like. It's like everything that's good about England and everything that's good about Welsh is fused into some delicious pancake. Or as they say in the book, cram, some type of thing that these dwarves in The Hobbit are eating. It's not very tasty, they say in the book, but I'm sure this book is quite tasty for you if you'd like it. If you would like to purchase this book, or any other book from Llyfrau Melyn Bapur, Paper Mill Books, until the end of August, you get a 10% discount. With this discount code, BENCHU. Just put that in and you'll get a bit of a discount. One person. What am I saying? Once per person, yeah. Back to the video. Anyone who likes J.R.R. Tolkien is familiar with the fact that these books have maps. Exquisite, wonderful fantasy maps that really set the bar for years to come of what a fantasy map and a fantasy novel should convey. And Adam Pearce has thankfully provided these for us, which he said that he created with Photoshop. I mean, that's quite a feat because he didn't just create or replicate these maps, rather. He Cymraeged them. He Welshified them. He translated the place names into Welsh. Tre Hobbit, Hobbiton. But more importantly, going further west on this map, you get Gwillgoed. Now, Mirkwood, if you're going to translate that into Welsh, Tywillgoed, it wouldn't sound effective. It's too long. A lot of things would naturally be too long if you translate them directly word for word, or too short in some cases. And he does a wonderful help to us in using the word gwill, gwillgoed. Gwill means evening twilight or morning twilight, that kind of light that semi-blinds you at moments. It's a bit daunting for the eye muscles to peek through. That's that word, gwillgoed, twilight wood kind of thing, for Mirkwood, which works. The desolation of smog. And if you tried to translate desolation into a landscape feature in Welsh, you'd get some kind of ridiculous 14-word jumbled nonsense. So he goes completely into another direction, but keeping the essence. Difeithwch smog. Difeithwch, that's featureless, barren waste. Difaith. Difeithwch. So that works. Because Welsh is such a locality-based language, not around our geography, but around the cultures that sprung up from localisms within the geography, that our words for place names, cannot simply be translated from another language in the same way. And he's aware of that. Adam is in this translation. So the running river, if you had Afon Rhedeg, that doesn't make sense. It sounds like the water is all gathering up into a ball and running away from you. That makes no sense. So he uses an ancient word that I liked long before I read this. Ebroedd. It means, well, in older poetry it's used a lot to describe the swift running of horses, but it's a swiftness. So, Afon Ebroedd, the river Ebroedd, which works, because Rhedeg would not. That would not work. If you were familiar with J.R.R. Tolkien at all, you know that throughout his books there are songs, poems, riddles between characters, rhymes. And what Adam Pearce did in this that I thought was really clever was he imitated in some senses the style of the 1700s, in which folk carols were quite frequent as the dominant medium of Welsh literary expression. And one common trait of this period in the 1700s of Welsh is that words were being compressed and there were a lot of dialectical differences emerging. And that's how he managed to get things to rhyme a bit. And it does make it a bit difficult or abstract at points, but it's better than having carols or poems or rigami, riddles and stuff that don't rhyme or keep any meter that's remotely the same as J.R.R. Tolkien. So he sacrificed some of the integrity, but he didn't change the route or shift it out of proportion. It's quite a feat, I think, and it's enjoyable. This translation has a clear favoring of Southern Welsh words in places, which makes sense. Translator Adam Pearce is from the southern part of Wales. Corin, for spider, which I consider to be vastly, very much a better word than prifcob, a northern word for spider. So that works. For him instead of o. It goes on and on. But I don't think this is so conscientious on the translator's part, but as That's the Welsh that he knows best how to master and shape, to give meaning to. You have to go with what you know. Speaking of that, I need to mention briefly the elves. So at the front of the book, he does mention Ellis, Ellison, Ellison, the last one being the singular. Ellison is plural. Ellisai, meaning like insidious little spirits kind of thing. But he uses this for elves because in our tradition, we don't have this concept of what elves are in the Germanic languages tradition. Okay? So rather than create a new word for them, which I think was the right decision, he simply altered the form that we already have to convey a slightly different meaning, which is confusing, I must admit, but the fact that he puts an explanation at the beginning conveys that he clearly understands it is confusing, which is a help. Still, the first time that you run into elves in the story, which isn't that far from the early parts, you will be, if you're a Welsh speaker, you were a bit confused briefly because, wait, these are supposed to be not good, right? But you realize quite quickly that it's elves. What I liked most, I think, in fact, was the age of the Welsh, or the register which Adam Pearce used, or chose, to translate into. Because I've translated before, I've been a translator, and the most important decision sometimes is before you even translate, what type of language within the language that you know are you going to write in? Because there's not just the written language and the spoken language. There's a continuum in formality as well as time. And what he does is quite brilliant here. I told him this. Is that J.R.R. Tolkien was writing these books, this world, the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, that kind of time frame, I think more the 30s. And at that point in Welsh, we have a very specific kind of Welsh. It's not the high biblical chapel Welsh, and it's not the broken dialects of common farmers. It's kind of a noble sense, an attempt to create a higher Welsh that's not dependent upon the Bible, but certainly with inspirations from it, I will add. But it lasts, is what I'm saying, from about the 20s to the 1960s weird postmodernism stuff, okay? And so it matches exactly the time in which J.R.R. Tolkien was writing, but it adds something to it. It's not just taking the English of the time and using the Welsh of the time. It adds a difference that you can only feel in Welsh, because there is a rusticness to it. There's an attempt to create a tale. For the first time, we're writing novels in Welsh in that period that are of a really high standard. So we're using language that is shaped for it. And I'm fluent in Welsh, but there were words that I did not know. I mean, not very many. I mean, I can get everything, the gist certainly. But Oldvog, I didn't know that word. It means knuckly or bulbous or naughty. So these words are being used in a very literary, a kind of a noble sense in a way, which I admire, worthy of dressing well kind of thing. But if you're coming to Welsh as a learner, this is not beginner stuff, okay? But I will say a big but on that. How I learned Welsh, I just sat down with books and forced my way through them with a dictionary and a bit of grammar books if I needed. If you will sit down and have the patience and the determination to do that with this book, by the end of that book, you will have such a grasp on Welsh that you will probably come and thank me for it later. And if you want this book, I'll put the link down below. Don't forget you can get the code BENQ, 10% off any book, including this one, and H.G. Wells' Time Machine, a Perian Damser. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I certainly enjoyed reading the book, and we'll see you next time. Diolch yn fawr iawn.